Yeah, we back. Yeah, we back. Now, today's gonna be a different type of video, as you already know, the illustrious month of August. But today, instead of venerating the ancestors and commemorating our forefathers and our foremothers, we're still gonna do that, but in a different way. Today, we're gonna be what I call analyzing the adversary. And when I say that, I'm talking about we're going to be examining the enemies that our forefathers were forced to confront. Now, today we're going to be talking about a prominent French general by the name of Roshambo. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with that name. In fact, there's a famous painting of Roshambo. Actually, take a look up on the screen, where after he was humiliated and vanquished and defeated by the superior forces of Dessalines and his compatriots, he was forced to capitulate and surrender and get on his knees in front of Dessalines and say, I surrender and I give up the territory. I will go home. I'm gone. I'm leaving. I've lost. Now, for whatever reason, Roshambo doesn't get too much publicity and promotion and popularity in historical European narratives, right? They like to bury that side of their history. They don't want to glorify those men, right? If you notice, as a kid, when you're growing up, they don't teach us about men like Roshambo, genocidal maniacs like Roshambo, right? Because I guarantee if young black children had a knowledge of who Roshambo was, and keep in mind there were many other historical figures just like Roshambo, if they had a knowledge of who he was, I guarantee their mindset would be different. Now, for those of y'all that have been following my channel for a very long time, I've described Roshambo as one of the Hall of Fame white supremacists. I remember one time I said that Roshambo makes Donald Trump look like Mahatma Gandhi, right? This was not a man who viewed black men, black women, and black children as human beings. He viewed them as a problem to be eliminated. And if it was left up to him, I would not even be here right now. I would not be on this microphone right now because Roshambo wanted to genocide all Haitians off the face of the earth. Roshambo wanted to exterminate Haitians off the face of the planet. But thankfully, due to the forefathers, he failed. And I'm here today on the microphone, right? I just had breakfast, right? I'm drinking my orange juice. I'm enjoying life on a Saturday morning, right? Because Roshambo failed in a genocidal adventure. Because Dessalines and Christophe and Clairvaux and Alexander Pichot and all those guys, they vanquished him, they destroyed him, they humiliated him and forced him to get on his knees and surrender. And that's the only reason I am here today, because Roshambo wanted to genocide all the blacks in the colony of Saint-Domingue, and I would not be here today if he succeeded. So today we're going to be talking about Roshambo, the genocidal barbarian. Now, Roshambo came from an elite military family. His father was actually a high-ranking naval officer that served in the American War of Independence, and he actually has a statue down in Washington, I believe, right? His father was Jean-Baptiste Comte de Rochambeau, right? Take a look up on the screen. A French Royal Army officer who played a critical role in the Franco-American victory at the Siege of Yorktown in 1781 during the American Revolutionary War. He was commander-in-chief of the Expédition Particulière, the French expeditionary force sent to North America during the conflict. Now, during the American War of Independence, Roshambo actually accompanied his father to North America, right? As you can see, Roshambo Jr., Roshambo Sr. Now, if you remember, like I mentioned before, there were other Haitian revolutionary leaders that were also part of that French expedition that came to North America to provide assistance to the American colonists during their War of Independence. If you remember, I had mentioned that Christophe served as a child soldier in the French military, and he was also in North America around the exact same time, which means that Roshambo and Christophe and other revolutionary leaders like Andre Rigaud and things like that, they were all in North America during the 1770s and 1780s when they were children and when they were teenagers, right? Now, years later, they'd be facing off on a battlefield during the Haitian Revolution. Now, let's continue. Like I mentioned before, if you go down to, I believe, Washington, D.C., you'll see this statue of Jean-Baptiste Comte de Rochambeau. This is Roshambo Sr. They erected a statue in his honor in the United States in recognition of the assistance he provided to the American colonists that were fighting for independence. Take a look up on the screen. The Roshambo Memorial in Lafayette Square in Washington is a statue of General Comte de Rochambeau, a French military leader who played a crucial role in the American Revolutionary War. The statue, erected in 1902, stands as a symbol of the strong Franco-American alliance. Now, let's get into the subject of today, the man of the hour, right? Roshambo Jr., the adversary, the enemy, right? The opposition. Let's get into it. Division General Roshambo was a French army officer and colonial administrator who served in the American Revolutionary War and the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars. He was the son of Jean-Baptiste Comte de Roshambo. Now, if you take a look up on the screen, you'll see his military service and the battles that he engaged in, right? The American Revolutionary War, the French Revolutionary Wars, the Napoleonic Wars, the Haitian Revolution, the Battle of Leipzig, right? And you can see he has served the French military from 1769 to 1813. So as you can see, the man had a very lengthy military career, over 40 years, right? Defending European supremacy to the day that he died. To the day that he took his very last breath, the man spilled blood in defense of European colonialism. Now let's continue. During his time in Haiti, Roshambo waged a war of extermination, massacring thousands of blacks of all ages and genders. In 1803, he developed the world's first gas chambers. I repeat, in 1803, he developed the world's first gas chambers. He used a rudimentary method of filling ships' cargo holds with sulfur dioxide to suffocate black prisoners of war. Now, time out. Now, when you think about gas chambers, people typically think about Nazi Germany. They think about Adolf Hitler. They think about the Jewish community. But a lot of people don't know that the first gas chambers were actually created back during the Haitian Revolution for the explicit purpose of killing as many blacks as possible. Children, the elderly, men, women, it doesn't matter, right? Roshambo, like I told you, he was really about that life when it came to defending European colonialism and European supremacy. When you hear me say things like the adversary, this man right here was the physical embodiment of the adversary in human flesh. Now let's continue. After Leclerc was replaced by Roshambo, Roshambo wrote to Napoleon that to reclaim Saint-Domingue, France must declare the Negroes as slaves and destroy at least 30,000 Negroes and Negresses. In his desperation, he turned to increasingly wanton acts of brutality. The French burned alive, hanged, drowned, and tortured black prisoners, reviving such practices as burying the blacks in piles of insects and boiling them in cauldrons of molasses. One night at Port Republican, he held a ball to which he invited the most prominent mulatto ladies, and at midnight, he announced the death of their husbands. However, each act of brutality was repaid by the Haitians. After one battle, Roshambo buried 500 prisoners alive. Dessalines responded by hanging 500 French prisoners. Now, time out. Now, Roshambo is actually credited with actually bringing unity to the blacks and the mulattoes, because Roshambo, like I said, he was a real deal white supremacist. He did not make no exception, not even for the mulattoes, right? He was a real deal white supremacist. He didn't care about if you were mixed race. He didn't care about if you were a quadroon, a hexadecaroon. Now, in that story, like they said, one night Roshambo held a get together, a party or whatever, and he invited some prominent, mulatto women, and they did not know that Roshambo was actually inviting them to come witness the decapitated heads of their husbands. So Roshambo had killed their husbands, decapitated them, and he invited them to a get together to witness, to take a look at their decapitated heads, right? Like I told you, this guy was a sick and twisted individual. He was very demented individual who committed crimes for no reason, who committed crimes for entertainment, right? Now let's continue. General Roshambo, who succeeded Leclerc as the commander of the French army in Saint-Domingue, proved to be both a competent military man and a sadistic maniac. His extermination policies towards the insurgents included a series of atrocities, which in turn led to wholesale reprisals against French troops. Mass hangings and drownings, victims burned at the stake, ambushes and massacres. Such episodes became common occurrences in a war to the death. Leclerc's disarmament order had backfired, inciting uprisings and defections throughout the colony. By October, the fighting had reached such a stalemate that Leclerc wrote to Napoleon recommending a war of extermination against the black population. The same month, Dessalines and Christophe had defected, along with Alexander Pichon, who had arrived with Leclerc's forces from France. Leclerc's successor, Roshambo, responded to the defections by murdering his own black troops and gassing prisoners with burning sulfur in the holds of the ships. Now, time out. Yes, you heard that right. During the Haitian Revolution, Roshambo murdered his own troops, his own black troops, for no reason. The average person might not know this, but many colonial militaries had black soldiers. And in fact, the vast majority of the Haitian revolutionary leaders were French military officers at one point in time before they took up arms against the French. So in that story, they said that when Dessalines and Christophe and Pétion and all the rest of the guys defected away from the French and took up arms against the French, Rochambeau responded by murdering his own black troops that still remain loyal to him. Now, what sense does that make? Why would you kill your own troops? That don't make no sense. But like I said, man, the adversary, he don't operate off logic and reason. Anyway, let's continue. This is actually a quote from the book by C.L.R. James, The Black Jacobins. It said this: Rochambeau drowned so many people in the Bay of the Cap that for many days, the people of the district would not eat fish. Earlier in 1802, Napoleon had partially revoked the 1794 Universal Emancipation Laws, which transformed the expeditions to the key colonies like Saint-Domingue and Guadeloupe into campaigns of re-enslavement. This, in turn, led to thousands to fight desperately against these expeditions in order to avoid a return to servitude. Convinced that the crisis in Hispaniola could only be resolved by mass murder, Rochambeau undertook to massacre much of the non-white civilian and military population. Under his direction, the French had imported hundreds of attack dogs from Cuba, which were used both in counterinsurgency operations and in grotesque public spectacles in which unfortunate prisoners and servants were eaten alive. Rochambeau also displayed exceptional cruelty in a number of other ways, such as massacring enemy troops after they had surrendered to his forces, burning men and women alive, and executing many soldiers and civilians by torture and drowning. Now, time out. Isn't it ironic that in the historical narrative, in the mainstream narrative, the ones who get painted as the barbarians and the genocidal maniacs are actually the Haitians who are defending themselves and defending their women and defending their children? Isn't it a crazy world that we live in, where the narrative is reframed in a way to where the Haitians are painted as barbarians for defending themselves, but the French are painted as this elegant culture of high status and high fashion and romance? Listen, man, propaganda is so crazy. You know, sometimes you gotta laugh to keep from crying. But anyway, let's continue. This is actually a direct quote from Rochambeau in one of his letters. He said this: "These reinforcements will put you in position to terminate your operations completely. I must advise you, however, that no allowance, either ration or money, will be made to you for the food of these dogs. You are to give them Negroes to eat." Now, yes, not only did this man, like they said, mass drownings, mass hangings, burying individuals alive by the hundreds and thousands, he also imported Cuban hunting dogs to literally massacre the population. Men, women, children, the elderly, the old people. I read one story of literally toddlers that were destroyed by these dogs. And the reason these toddlers were killed was to discourage the others from joining the rebellion. And that's why it's so crazy when you examine the European narrative of history, where they try to paint the Haitian revolutionary leaders as these barbarians for massacring French women and children, but they don't even talk about the atrocities they committed against our women and children, as if our women and children didn't have the same value to be acknowledged in the historical narrative. Just to kind of give you an idea of how nefarious the propaganda is, there were actually way more Haitians that died during the conflict than French, but for some reason the Haitians are painted as the barbarians for what they did to the French, when in reality the Haitians died in larger numbers. And we're not even taking into account those who died during the days of slavery, those who died during the days of the colony. If we calculate that, if we estimate that, how many blacks do you think were killed by the French in total? It's got to be up in the millions. Anyway, let's continue. Take a look up on the screen. On an appointed day, a rambunctious crowd had gathered to witness what promised to be a unique and ghastly spectacle. The scene is known to us through the French sailor Jean-Baptiste Lemonnier de la Fosse, the French general Pamphile de la Croix, and the mixed-race officer Justin Lac, all of whom apparently witnessed this in person. And the 19th century historians Thomas Maju and Bobwe Adouin, who collected oral histories from Haitian veterans. A black prisoner was dragged into an arena and tied to a pole. Teams of dogs made their entry. Though they were maddened by hunger and the public's clamor, they could not understand what was expected of them and stood motionless around their foe. It took some prodding by the drivers, and according to Ardouin and Maju, Boyer cutting open the victim's stomach. Now time out. When they say Boyer, they are not talking about the future Haitian president, Jean-Pierre Boyer. This was a French officer, a white French officer, Boyer, by the same name. So when they say Boyer, they are not talking about the future Haitian leader Boyer. This is somebody else. Do not get it confused. Now, anyway, let's continue. Boyer cutting open the victim's stomach before the dogs warmed up to the scent of blood. Then, suddenly, in a whirl of red dust, they devoured their hapless prey to the roar of the crowd and the blare of military music. The execution had lasted for a few minutes. Their appetite for vengeance was satiated. The spectators then retired to their domicile, while the dogs, having proven their ferociousness, were prepped for their first mission, a counterinsurgency operation in the nearby island of Tortuga. Now, time out. Yes, this is how Roshambo would entertain himself, right? He would entertain himself by holding these large events where large crowds would be gathered. Everybody would come out from all parts of the cities and towns, and they would watch a black man or a black woman or a black child get eaten by dogs, right? And it would be a whole celebration. Like you said, military music, the sound of cheers and fanfare. It was a celebration. It was a celebration. We're going to go watch a black man get destroyed. This is how Roshambo and the French population would entertain themselves on the colony. That's why I do not understand how the French managed to curate this image of luxury and romance and culture when this is a barbaric people. These are barbaric people. Now let's continue. Isolated, outmaneuvered, and bankrupt of moral and economic capital, Rochambeau's forces met with the final defeat in November 1803. Napoleon had sent between 44,000 and 48,000 men to Hispaniola between late 1801 and the spring of 1803. And by the end of that summer, only 7,000 men remained. The failure of Rochambeau's genocidal attempt to preserve French rule became official in January 1804. Now, time out. Yes, like I said, I'm not even supposed to be here right now, right? We're not even supposed to be here right now, brothers. We're supposed to all be dead. Haitians are not supposed to exist. We're not supposed to be here. The plan was to wipe us off the face of the earth and throw us in the dustbin of history. And that was supposed to be the end of our chapter. That was the plan. That was Napoleon Bonaparte's plan, right? Napoleon Bonaparte, who they say is the greatest general of all time. His plan was to wipe me off the face of the earth. I'm not supposed to be here. My mom not supposed to be here. My sister not supposed to. We're not supposed to be. We're supposed to be exterminated. But thankfully, due to the superior military science, the superior military intelligence of Dessalines, Christophe, and all the other illustrious brothers that stood on business as they were supposed to, I am here today enjoying life. And of course, as we already know, November 1803, the famous battle, the Battle of Vertières, the final battle of the conflict, which confirmed the victory. And keep in mind, it was over 1,000 black men that died in that battle. So we got to pay homage to the 1,000 forefathers who laid down their life in that final battle. Could you imagine all the black men that went into the final battle, the Battle of Vertières, and they didn't make it out? They died on the battlefield. They never were able to see independence. Imagine that, brothers. Imagine that for a second. Imagine you made it to the finish line, because the final battle, the Battle of Vertières, was the finish line. So you made it through all the conflict, all the chaos from 1791, and then you finally make it to the final battle. And then you get killed in the final battle and you never get to see independence, but you made that ultimate sacrifice. That is crazy, brothers. Over 1,000 black men got killed in that final battle. They never got to see independence. They made it through all the storms of the revolution, made it to the final Battle of Vertières, and laid down their life on the battlefield. Rest in peace to the over 1,000 forefathers who made the ultimate sacrifice and never got the chance to see the victory, never got the chance to see independence. Salute to the predecessors, man. Salute to the forefathers 100 times over. Now, let's continue. It is hard to estimate the number of men, women, and children that were killed by Rochambeau's forces. His troops had slaughtered thousands of people, mostly of African descent, while privation and disease carried off many more. The Rochambeau genocide remains synonymous with the worst excesses of colonial war, and it still serves as a reminder of the extremely high cost of preserving universal emancipation in the site of the first large-scale experience with general slave emancipation in the hemisphere. At the surrender of Cap Français, Rochambeau was captured by a British squadron under the command of Captain John Loring and returned to England as a prisoner, where he remained interned for 9 years. Now, yes, the Europeans were also capturing prisoners of war, engaging in tribalism just like everybody else. Now, this was before, obviously, the Berlin Conference and the formation of NATO and all these international institutions where European nations, Western nations all began to coordinate their foreign policy, their military policy, their economic policy. Back in those days, it was straight tribalism. This country versus this country, this tribe versus that tribe, this group versus that group. That was the way of the world during that time, right? It wouldn't be until way later, years down the line, when the Europeans would begin to, collaborate and coordinate and effectively begin to move as a block. But back then, it was straight tribalism. The French versus the British versus the Spanish versus the French, the Portuguese versus the Spanish, etc., etc. But anyways, man, as we already know, Roshambo was ultimately defeated at the final battle, the Battle of Vertières in 1803, where he was forced to capitulate and surrender to Dessalines. Let Dessalines know. He sent a letter and said, listen, boss, you got it. You got it, bro. You got it, man. Ain't nothing I could do. You got it, man. You got it. Just give me a few days, right? Give me a few days. Let me organize myself. Let me pack my things, and I'll let you have the country, bro. I'll let you have it. Cool. I acknowledge that you are the supreme leader of the territory. I acknowledge the fact that you have defeated me fair and square. And at the end of the day, I capitulate, right? I capitulate. And I acknowledge the fact that you are the superior military commander. And I acknowledge the fact that I lost. Now, like we mentioned before, Roshambo would end up spending many years in a British prison. And after his release, he would go on to continue his military career. Take a look up on the screen. He was mortally wounded in the Battle of Nations and died 3 days later at Leipzig at the age of 58. And that would be the end of his chapter. Like I said, until the day he died, he defended that French flag and he defended European colonialism and white supremacy. And at the end of the day, he still had to get on his knees and kneel and capitulate in front of the black man. Yes, yes, indeed. Now, anyways, man, it's your boy Neferkari Dessalines back in the Billy. Yes, indeed. 21 Cannons, first single off the next project. Link in the description, pinned comment at the top. Subscribe to the Patreon, NTD1814, and I'm gone. Peace.
Walk in the room and I stop all that talking. Stay on alert and I'm moving with caution. Feeling like baby, I'm up in New Orleans. Feeling like Stunner, feeling like Wheezy. Look at my nigga, my wrist is Fiji. Trying to get cash, I don't wanna be famous. Look at my nigga, my wrist contagious. Ain't no stopping when I get started. Ain't no stopping, gotta go harder. Drop that top, whip go brainless. Chasing that check, I ain't trying to be famous. Whipping that Benz, feeling like spaceships. Everything official, ain't no fake shit. Doors unlocked, community gated. Look at this ice, bet they gon' hate it. Look at my life, enemy vanquished. And it's on sight, gun in your faces. Look at that love, turn to hatred. Kill my ops like a Haitian. Ain't no love, ain't no honor, ain't no trust, ain't no conscience. I ain't perfect, but I'm honest. Enemy lurking, enemy watching, enemy stalking, taking photos 24/7. Straight surveillance, hit a new spot, change location. Shorty got wet off my cadence. Just seen ice, but I got papers. Ladies love me, and I got flavors. Ain't no love in these streets. Nigga, yo jaloux, yo méchant. Got them chains off my feet, by the sword and by the gun. They throw flowers at my feet, and they say that I'm the one, and they say that I'm the target. When they see me, they pay homage. Shorty talking about divesting, she with Malibu most wanted. When I go and get that check, I put it up and make it stack. Tracking that bank, whipping that Benzo. When I pull off, it go fast. Need a Fortune 5 accountant just to count up all this cash. Got these Sambos trying to sue me just to make me walk it back. Walk in the room and I stop all that talking. Stay on alert and I'm moving with caution. Feeling like baby, I'm up in New Orleans. Feeling like Stunner, feeling like Wheezy. Look at my nigga, my wrist is Fiji. Trying to get cash, I don't wanna be famous. Look at my nigga, my wrist contagious. Ain't no stopping when I get started. Ain't no stopping, gotta go harder. Drop that top, whip go brainless. Chasing that check, I ain't trying to be famous. Whipping that Benz, feeling like spaceships. Everything official, ain't no fake shit. Doors unlocked, community gated. Look at this ice, bet they gon' hate it. Look at my life, enemy vanquished. And it's on sight, gun in your faces. Look at that love, turn to hatred. Kill my ops like a Haitian. Ain't no love, ain't no honor, ain't no trust, ain't no conscience. I ain't perfect, but I'm honest. Enemy lurking, enemy watching, enemy stalking, taking photos 24/7. Straight surveillance, hit a new spot, change location. Shorty got wet off my cadence. Just seen ice, but I got papers. Ladies love me, and I got flavors. Ain't no love in these streets. Nigga, yo jaloux, yo méchant.